There is a rhythm hidden deep within the earth, a pulse that beats slower than lifetimes, slower than empires, a cycle that spans millennia. It does not make headlines. It does not ask permission, but it moves, quietly, surely, turning the page on civilizations, reshaping the land, resetting the story. Around every 12 years, something profound happens, something that ancient cultures tried to warn us about through myth, monument, and memory. What if the world as we know it is not the first of its kind? What if history is not a line, but a loop, marked by cataclysm and renewal? And what if the next reset is not centuries away, but close? In this journey, we'll explore the signs, the science, and the stories, not to fear the cycle, but to remember it. So find a quiet place, breathe deeply, and let yourself drift through time as we uncover the 12-year rhythm that may shape the rise and fall of everything we know. In the distant shadows of humanity's forgotten past, where the line between myth and memory blurs like mist on an ancient plain, there lies a riddle that is whispered through time. A question, etched into stone and buried in ice. Are we living in a world built atop the ruins of many that came before? And, more importantly, is it all destined to happen again? For centuries, stories of great floods, fire from the sky, and sudden upheavals have echoed across the traditions of ancient cultures. From the Mayans and the Egyptians to the Sumerians and Hindus, they all speak of cycles, of endings, followed by new beginnings, of a great reset. Modern science often dismisses these tales as allegory or imagination. Yet beneath the soil, beneath the ice, and in the magnetic memory of the earth itself, something stirs. A pulse, a rhythm, suggesting that cataclysms may not be random at all, but part of a clockwork system ticking silently behind the veil of time. The theory of the 12-year cataclysm cycle rests on a startling idea that every 12 millennia, the Earth undergoes a global event so devastating that it wipes out most signs of civilization, reshaping continents, rewriting climates, and sending humanity back to a primitive state. These are not local disasters, not isolated incidents of flood or fire, but truly planetary resets, so total that only myths and scattered ruins remain to tell the tale. Could it be that what we call prehistory is actually post-cataclysm? That the great megalithic monuments, the mysterious alignments of ancient structures with celestial events, and the sudden disappearance of advanced knowledge are not anomalies, but clues to a much older story? We begin with the planet itself. Earth's geological and climatic history is marked by sudden, violent shifts, extinction events that arrive not gradually, but seemingly overnight. The Younger Dryas, a period around 12,800 years ago, saw temperatures plunge globally, massive floods reshape the land, and species vanish in a geological blink. It is a puzzle that traditional models still struggle to explain. What could cause such a sudden shift? Some believe the answer lies in space, in the movement of our solar system through the galactic plane, or in the erratic behavior of the sun. Others point to geological factors: magnetic pole shifts, crustal displacement, or the buildup of subterranean pressure released all at once in a global burst of earthquakes and volcanic activity. Still, others suggest external impacts. Fragments of comets or asteroids bombarding the Earth in cycles, predictable, deadly, and forgotten until it's too late. What is not debated is that something profound happened around 1200 years ago. Civilization, as we understand it, appeared almost overnight. Agriculture, writing, cities, all emerged in a relatively short window, following a vast global disturbance. Sites like Göbekli Tepe, submerged ruins off the coasts of India and Japan, and the sudden appearance of astronomical knowledge in early cultures all point to a legacy, something carried forward from before. And yet, mainstream history insists that civilization began around 60 years ago, conveniently forgetting the thousands of years before, filled with silence or secrets. If a great cataclysm occurred, where did the survivors go? What knowledge was preserved? And by whom? Could ancient myths of underground cities, gods from the sky, or sacred arcs be distorted memories of a once global catastrophe? We stand now in the modern age, surrounded by technology, science, and confidence in our understanding of the world. But how much of it is built on assumptions? The idea that cataclysms only happened in the distant past gives us comfort. But the cycle, if it exists, does not care about our calendars or beliefs. If 1200 years is the rhythm, and the last great shift was near the end of the Ice Age, then we are perilously close to the next strike. And the signs are already beginning to show. All across the globe, the Earth seems to be stirring. The magnetic field is weakening, shifting at a pace never before observed in recorded history. The North Pole, once a steady fixture, is now racing eastward toward Siberia. Geological records show that this may be a prelude to a full magnetic pole reversal, a process that can unleash tremendous energy and destabilize weather patterns, radiation exposure, and perhaps even influence tectonic behavior. Volcanoes once thought dormant have begun to awaken. Seismic activity increases each year, and massive cracks in the Earth's crust, like those in Africa's Great Rift Valley, hint at the early stages of continental reconfiguration. At the same time, solar activity fluctuates with growing unpredictability. Solar flares and coronal mass ejections release waves of energy that can disrupt satellites, electrical grids, and the fragile balance of our digital world. But perhaps most unsettling is the evidence that this has all happened before. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a powerful civilization destroyed in a single day and night of fire and water. The Bible tells of Noah's flood. Hindu texts speak of cyclical destructions, the yugas, each ending with devastation and renewal. The Popol Vuh of the Maya describes previous worlds destroyed by jaguar attacks, storms, and fire from above. Native American legends, Australian Aboriginal myths, African tribal stories, all tell the same tale in different words. The world ends, the sky falls, and then it begins again. Could these shared memories be remnants of the last great reset? Could ancient cultures have encoded these warnings in their stories, monuments, and calendars, hoping that future generations would decode them in time? Göbekli Tepe, buried deliberately in Turkey over 10,000 years ago, stands as a silent sentinel to this mystery. Its carvings include symbols of celestial alignments and what some interpret as depictions of cometary impacts. The pillars seem to tell a story of stars, of animals, and of a catastrophe. Scholars have suggested that the builders knew something was coming and chose to hide their knowledge beneath layers of earth, preserved for an uncertain future. But what if it's not just about preserving knowledge, but surviving the cycle? Many ancient structures are built with megalithic precision, aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and specific stars. From the pyramids of Giza to the stone circles of Britain, from Machu Picchu to Easter Island, these monuments seem obsessed with the sky, with time, with measuring something beyond simple seasons. What if they were warning systems, astronomical clocks, designed to track the return of a cosmic threat? And what of the sudden vanishings? Civilizations like the Indus Valley, the Olmecs, the mysterious builders of Nan Madol, and the city beneath the waters near Yonaguni. They appear, thrive, and disappear, often without clear cause. Could it be that they too were victims of a recurring cataclysm? As we look deeper into the Earth's history, patterns begin to emerge. Roughly every 11,600 to 12,000 years, there is a spike in cosmic dust, a rise in sea levels, an increase in global temperatures followed by plunging cold and signs of massive flooding. This is not speculation. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica tell the same tale. Tree rings, ocean sediments, and rock strata confirm it. Something happens, and it happens regularly. But if the Earth has endured this before, and if survivors have walked through fire and flood to rebuild, who were they? Where did they go? And are we now standing at the very edge of the next cycle, unaware, unprepared, and distracted by the illusion of progress? The clues are there, in the sky, in the ground, and perhaps deep within ourselves. There is a growing body of researchers who suggest that human history is not a straight line of progress, but rather a spiral, ascending and collapsing, a loop of rise, fall, and rebirth. They argue that civilization is far older than we believe, that great cultures existed long before Mesopotamia or Egypt, and that these civilizations were wiped away, not by war or decay, but by Earth's own clock. If so, then we are not the first global society, and perhaps not the last. Take, for example, the sudden rise of agriculture around 10,000 BC. For millions of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. And then, seemingly without cause, we began farming, settling, building. Archaeologists struggle to explain this leap. Why then? Why so suddenly? Some propose climate change as the cause. But what if it wasn't just better weather? What if it was the aftermath of a collapse? Survivors settling down, trying to preserve memory and rebuild amidst ruins they no longer understood? Many ancient myths speak of those who taught humanity, beings who arrived after disaster to bring knowledge. In Egypt, they were Thoth and Osiris. In Sumer, they were the Apkallu. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl. In India, the Rishis. They were said to come from the stars or from the sea. bearing the secrets of civilization, language, astronomy, agriculture, architecture. Mainstream scholars call these legends symbolic, but the consistency across cultures raises a deeper question. Were these the survivors of the last Great Reset? And what exactly happens during one of these cycles? If we turn to the geological and astronomical records, patterns begin to align. One hypothesis focuses on the sun. Our life-giving star is not always calm. Evidence suggests that roughly every 12 years, it undergoes a period of violent activity, a solar micronova. Unlike a supernova, which destroys the star, a micronova is a sudden release of plasma and radiation from the sun's surface, an explosion that can hurl high-energy particles and debris toward the Earth. If such an event occurred, the effects would be catastrophic. A burst of solar energy could strip away parts of the atmosphere, ignite wildfires worldwide, and destabilize the magnetic field. The heat could cause rapid ice melt at the poles, leading to massive flooding and sea level rise, just like the ancient flood myths describe. Simultaneously, the impact on tectonic plates could trigger global earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, a true planetary cataclysm. Scientific models and satellite data now reveal strange patterns on the lunar surface that some interpret as evidence of past solar outbursts. Scorched scars on the moon's face that suggest an origin beyond meteor impacts. On Earth, deposits of tiny glass beads, found in layers corresponding to ancient disasters, may be remnants of intense heat from above, heat so fierce it could vitrify sand and soil in an instant. Still, others point to the galactic environment as the culprit. As our solar system moves through the Milky Way, it passes through regions dense with cosmic dust, debris, and energy fields. This journey takes us above and below the galactic plane, a cycle that roughly aligns with the timing of previous cataclysms. Some theorize that these periods of passage disturb the Oort cloud, sending comets inward, or that they trigger responses in the sun itself, prompting the aforementioned micronovas. Regardless of the cause, the effect seems terrifyingly consistent. The Earth changes dramatically. Climates flip, oceans rise, civilizations fall. The survivors scatter, myths are born, and the slow crawl back to stability begins again until the next reset. And perhaps most eerie of all is this: the timing. From the end of the last ice age to today, we are nearing that threshold again. The magnetic poles are migrating rapidly. Solar activity is unpredictable. Weather extremes intensify, and strange anomalies are being recorded beneath the Antarctic ice. Something is stirring. Something ancient. And whether we are ready or not, the cycle does not wait. What if the greatest secret of human history is not what we built, but what we lost? Around the world, there are ruins and artifacts that seem to defy the capabilities of ancient cultures as we understand them. Enormous stone blocks, cut and placed with machine-like precision. Structures aligned with celestial bodies in ways that suggest advanced astronomical knowledge. And the ever-recurring motif of the flood, the fall, and the gods who once walked among men. At Baalbek in Lebanon, massive foundation stones weighing hundreds of tons were placed with a precision that baffles engineers. In South America, the walls of Sacsayhuaman fit together with such perfection that not even a blade of grass can slide between them. In the Pacific, non-Madol rises from the sea in basalt formations no one can explain. And underwater, off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument stirs debate about lost civilizations swallowed by the ocean. What if these were not the achievements of our ancestors, but the remnants of a forgotten chapter? And what if those who came after tried to replicate, to remember, to rebuild, but only managed echoes of the original greatness? It would explain the sudden appearance of knowledge in human history, and its just as sudden decline into myth and legend. Some researchers believe that certain ancient texts are not merely religious but records, attempts to describe real events through the lens of metaphor. The Book of Enoch speaks of watchers who descended from the heavens and taught forbidden knowledge. The Mahabharata describes weapons that cause the air to burn and the earth to shake. Echoes, perhaps, of advanced technology now lost. The Emerald Tablets, attributed to Thoth, speak of Atlantean knowledge, hidden deep underground to await a time of awakening. Could it be that beneath our feet lie vaults, caches of wisdom and warnings from civilizations that saw the end coming? That we are, even now, living among their ruins, blind to the meaning behind stone and symbol? The ancient world was obsessed with time, with cycles, with ages. The Mayan long count calendar, the Hindu Yuga cycles, the Egyptian concept of Zep Tepi, or the first time, all point to a deep awareness that history repeats, and that great changes come not gradually, but in sudden waves. We, in our modern arrogance, have dismissed these as superstition. Yet we build our satellites and systems to monitor the stars, track asteroids, and study the sun's behavior. Are we not, in our own way, still watching the sky? What separates us from those before is not knowledge, but memory. They remembered, and we have forgotten. But the earth remembers, and it keeps time with a steady, implacable rhythm. Every grain of sand, every layer of ice, every fossil and fault line tells the story of cycles. And now, we may be at the end of one such turning. If we are, what will remain of us? Will the skyscrapers crumble into hills? Will our cities sink beneath rising seas? Will future generations discover the scattered bones of satellites and wonder who built them? Or will we, for the first time, break the cycle and preserve not just knowledge, but wisdom? To do that, we must first remember and listen to the stories etched in stone, whispered in myths, and echoed in the deep pulse of the earth itself. High above our heads, the cosmos continues its silent movements. Stars drift, planets spin, and deep within the sun, forces churn that we barely understand. For ancient civilizations, the sky was not just a backdrop. It was a living map, a clock that told of ages long past and ages yet to come. They watched the heavens with a kind of reverence we no longer possess, because they believed the sky held answers and perhaps warnings. In the ancient city of Teotihuacan, the layout mirrors the Orion constellation. The pyramids of Giza do the same. Why would separate cultures, oceans apart, align their greatest monuments to the same stars? Why the obsession with solstices, equinoxes, and celestial alignments? Could it be that these were not just religious or ceremonial, but functional, that they mark times of great change, reminders of events once witnessed from the ground. Many now speculate that Earth's history is not random, but cosmic, that planetary cataclysms are tied not only to terrestrial cycles, but to cosmic positions, alignments between the Earth, the Sun, and possibly galactic forces we're only beginning to understand. Some researchers point to evidence of solar outbursts, coinciding with our solar system's movement through dense interstellar clouds, dust and plasma capable of disturbing the heliosphere, triggering solar chaos and raining devastation on Earth. Even ancient calendars seem to reflect this. The Mayan calendar, ending in a cycle around 2012, was never about the end of the world, but about the end of a great cycle and the beginning of another. Their long count wasn't counting time as we do. It was measuring cosmic rhythm. Similarly, the Hindu Yuga system breaks time into vast ages, each ending in destruction and rebirth. Again and again, cultures point to a pattern. Not a linear flow, but an endless spiral, a cycle of renewal through collapse. Today, we may scoff at such notions. Our sciences are empirical, our models built on observed data. But the deeper we dig into the Earth, and the deeper we look into the stars, the more we begin to see what the ancients may have known all along. The sun is not static, the Earth is not immune, and civilization is not permanent. One of the most compelling clues lies beneath the Antarctic ice. Satellite scans have revealed massive anomalies under the frozen continent. Possible structures, geometric formations, and unexplained heat signatures. Some believe this may be evidence of an ancient civilization buried beneath miles of ice. A civilization that lived in Antarctica when it was ice-free, over 12,000 years ago. How could that be possible? The answer may lie in Earth's crustal displacement, a theory proposed by Charles Hapgood and even supported tentatively by Einstein. It suggests that the outer shell of the Earth can shift rapidly over the molten interior, moving continents and triggering sudden climate shifts. If such an event occurred, it would explain not only the sudden freezing of Antarctica, but the mass extinctions, abrupt flooding, and total upheaval seen in the archaeological and geological record. Imagine a world where, in the span of weeks or even days, the axis shifts, the poles relocate, and entire regions go from temperate to frozen, or from ocean floor to mountaintop. Imagine the terror of skies filled with fire, of seas that swallow cities, of stars no longer appearing where they once did. Such an event would feel like the end of the world. And perhaps that's why so many cultures remember it that way. What's even more unsettling is the mounting evidence that this may not be just a theory. Paleomagnetic data, ice core samples, and radiocarbon dating all reveal moments in history when sudden dramatic changes took place. Not slow, evolutionary shifts, but cataclysms. Snap transitions in temperature, in sea level, in global biosystems. So the question is not whether the cycle exists, but whether it is about to repeat. The modern world is unprepared for catastrophe on a global scale. Despite our technological advancements, our cities are vulnerable, our infrastructure fragile. A large solar flare alone, such as the Carrington event of 1859, would today destroy power grids, satellites, and communications across the globe. Now imagine something 10 times greater. A solar micronova. The resulting electromagnetic pulse could wipe clean our digital world in seconds, and most wouldn't even understand what had happened. Then there are the oceans. Vast, dark, and rising. Ice melt is accelerating. Greenland and Antarctica are losing billions of tons of ice each year. Scientists warn of sea level rise over the coming centuries. But what if it happens faster? Much faster? If a sudden solar outburst or crustal shift were to destabilize the polar caps, the oceans would rise not in inches over decades, but in meters over days. Coastal cities would vanish. Billions would be displaced. We build our society on a fragile balance, assuming stability is the norm. But Earth's history suggests otherwise. Catastrophe is the norm. The long stretches of quiet we call civilization are the exception. Brief intermissions between acts of destruction. And we are now living at the end of one such intermission. Some scientists have begun to warn, subtly, cautiously, that our planet is behaving strangely. Magnetic anomalies, shifting weather, unexpected solar behavior. The Schumann resonance, a natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, is fluctuating in ways not previously recorded. Some call it noise. Others believe it may be the Earth's way of signaling change. A deep, low pulse, warning of what's to come. And what of the ancients? Did they build shelters? Store knowledge? Did they try to preserve humanity through the cycle? The stories of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx, of metallic libraries in South America, of advanced artifacts found in rock strata that predate known civilization, all suggest that some did, that at least a few understood what was coming, and took steps to preserve the flame of knowledge through the storm. We, too, may need to do the same. For if the 12 zero-year cycle is real, if the signs are here, and the pattern is repeating, then the most urgent question becomes not how, but when. Are we decades away? Years? Or has it already begun, and we are simply failing to see it for what it is? The ancients spoke in symbols: fire from the sky, water swallowing the land, darkness that lasts for days. Perhaps they weren't being poetic. Perhaps they were being literal. And perhaps, just perhaps, they hoped that someone, someday, would finally listen. Across every continent, ancient structures stand in silent testimony, some half buried by time, others perfectly preserved in desolate landscapes, untouched by modern development. There is a haunting similarity among many of them, not in style, but in purpose. They appear to be watching the stars, the solstices, the turning of time itself. It's as though they were trying to measure something vast, something slow-moving and powerful, perhaps something that comes rarely, but arrives with overwhelming force. At the heart of this mystery lies the question of memory. What happens to memory after catastrophe? In the aftermath of a global reset, survivors would struggle to explain what happened. Oral traditions would carry fragments, distorted over generations into myths and legends. Without written language or advanced tools, complex ideas would turn into symbols. Stories of gods and monsters, fire and water, good and evil. And yet, encoded within these tales, something real might remain, a seed of truth wrapped in mythic skin. We see this across cultures. The Hopi speak of previous worlds destroyed by fire and flood. The Dogon tribe of Mali hold detailed knowledge of Sirius, a star system invisible to the naked eye. Information they claim was given to them by beings from the sky. In ancient times, the Norse told of Ragnarok, a fiery end followed by a rebirth of the world. The Aztecs believed they lived in the fifth sun, the fifth world, to rise after 4 previous destructions. All tell of cycles, not just time moving forward, but great resets that begin the world anew. And as we look closer, patterns of geometry and mathematics begin to emerge. Sacred numbers, like 432, 108, 72, and 144, appear again and again in ancient architecture and texts. These numbers relate to celestial mechanics, the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble of Earth's axis that completes a cycle every 25,920 years. Divided into halves or quarters, we get intervals of approximately 12 zero years. The same duration echoed in the Cataclysm theory. Were the ancients encoding time itself into stone? Were their monuments clocks meant to endure even when memory fades? Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Beyond its mysterious construction and astronomical alignments, it contains a mathematical precision that has baffled researchers for centuries. The height-to-perimeter ratio encodes pi. The orientation is almost perfectly aligned to true north, and deep within its core, shafts point towards significant celestial objects, including Orion's belt and Sirius. Is it a tomb, a temple, or something else entirely? A beacon across time. The deeper we go, the more we must ask, how did someone before us survive the last reset? And did they try to leave behind warnings, records, blueprints? Did they understand the cycle, the rhythm of destruction, and attempt to pass that knowledge forward to those who would come after? If so, have we failed to hear them? Or are we just now starting to remember? Because the signs around us are mounting. The magnetic field is weakening at a rate much faster than previously recorded. Entire zones, like the South Atlantic anomaly, show signs of magnetic decay, disruptions in Earth's natural shield against solar radiation. If the field continues to collapse, we could face devastating consequences from even a moderate solar event, let alone a micronova. The protection we take for granted is not guaranteed. It is dynamic, and it may be fading. At the same time, climate patterns are becoming erratic. Extremes are no longer rare. They are becoming the norm. Droughts, followed by floods. Heat waves in places once cold. Wildfires consuming entire regions. And earthquakes, sudden, unexpected, in places long considered stable. The earth is moving, breathing, warning. But are we listening? Among the most unsettling aspects of the Cataclysm cycle theory is its cold, mechanical certainty. It doesn't require evil, or intent, or judgment. It doesn't demand belief or disbelief. It simply ticks forward, indifferent to whether we understand it. This is what makes it so different from prophecies or end times narratives. It is not about punishment. It is about pattern, about inevitability, and perhaps about preparation. For if this cycle is real, then the survivors of past resets may not have been the lucky or the chosen, but the prepared, the ones who observed, who remembered, who built for a future they might never see, who buried knowledge instead of gold, who carved symbols instead of names, who thought not in years, but in ages. There are stories of such people even today, legends of the shining ones, of those who emerged from the shadows after the flood, to guide and teach. They appear in nearly every culture, often described as taller than normal, radiant, with eyes full of knowledge. Were they the last carriers of the old world, guardians of what came before, or simply mythic echoes of the few who survived when the sky fell? Modern science, while cautious, has begun to acknowledge the gaps. The sudden shifts in climate at the end of the Younger Dryas period still lack a conclusive explanation. The presence of meltwater pulses, massive floods that reshaped continents, leaves traces in every corner of the world. The formation of massive canyons like the channeled scablands in the U.S. defy gradualist theories, suggesting sudden, massive flows of water on an unimaginable scale. What caused these floods? One possibility is the rapid melting of ice sheets triggered by a cosmic event, a solar flash or cosmic impact that destabilized the Earth's systems in an instant. The evidence lies not just in geology, but in ancient story, in memory passed down through firelight and etched into cave walls. Even the location of ancient ruins, now beneath the sea, tells us that sea levels rose rapidly at least once in our deep past. We are only beginning to explore these submerged worlds. Sonar has revealed city-like formations off the coast of India, potential ruins beneath Lake Titicaca, roads that vanish beneath Caribbean waves. If these are what they seem, then the story of human civilization stretches back far beyond the textbooks and has been interrupted again and again by catastrophe. But what if we could finally break the cycle? What if knowledge, instead of being lost, was spread, preserved, and acted upon? What if we could read the signs, interpret the symbols, and prepare not just to survive, but to guide the future? To do so, we must first accept a difficult truth, that we are not the first to stand on the edge of the unknown. Others have been here before. They left us messages, wrapped in myth and buried in time. They watched the skies, mapped the stars, tracked the shifting earth. And perhaps, in their final moments, they hoped someone would remember. That someone might be us. The ancient texts are cryptic, but their repetition across distant cultures suggests a shared origin, a trauma so immense that its memory echoes through human consciousness like a scar. In the myths of Mesopotamia, the gods decide to send a flood to wipe out humanity, but one man is warned. In the Bible, it's Noah. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's Utnapishtim. In India, Manu builds a boat guided by a divine fish. In Greek lore, Deucalion and Pyrrha survive the wrath of Zeus by building an ark. Always a flood, always a warning, always a handful of survivors. It is tempting to dismiss these stories as cultural metaphors, but what if they were eyewitness accounts, filtered through time, stylized into legend, but rooted in fact? A global deluge, A destruction of the world as it was known, followed by rebirth. Could this be the memory of the last global reset? A cataclysm so all-encompassing that its trauma became the foundation of religion, of origin, myths, of time itself? Geological evidence supports the possibility of a sudden and massive flooding event at the end of the last ice age. Massive glacial lakes like Lake Agassiz in North America are believed to have burst their natural dams, sending torrents of water cascading across continents. But even these explanations fall short of accounting for the global uniformity of flood myths. Something more was at play. Something faster, hotter, more violent. Ice cores from Greenland reveal a sharp spike in temperature, followed by a precipitous drop. Events separated not by centuries, but years. This kind of instability is not common. It suggests a trigger, something external and sudden. Scientists have theorized about comet fragments striking the ice sheets, instantly vaporizing water, sending it into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, and causing floods and freezing in the same breath. Could this be the missing link? A cosmic trigger that initiates the Earth's cycle of renewal. Perhaps these fragments come not randomly, but from a larger object. An ancient comet on a long, slow orbit, returning every 12,0 years like a clockwork harbinger. And perhaps the ancients knew. They watched the skies obsessively. They named the stars, mapped the constellations, and built their cities in harmony with the heavens. If a celestial event had brought destruction once before, it would make sense to memorialize it in the stars, to mark its return. The precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, allows for the tracking of long cosmic cycles, and it appears in nearly every ancient cosmology in some form, always associated with endings and beginnings. This deep astronomical knowledge, appearing fully formed in ancient Sumer, Egypt, and Mesoamerica, remains a puzzle. How did early humans develop such precise understanding of celestial mechanics without telescopes, without computers? Perhaps they didn't develop it. Perhaps they inherited it. There are whispers in history of knowledge saved from fire, of libraries burned, and wisdom hidden. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria is often mourned as the greatest intellectual loss in history. But what if there were others, older and even more important? Secret chambers, like those rumored beneath the Sphinx. Underground vaults, sealed until the stars are right. It's not fantasy. It's the echo of something half-remembered. In our arrogance, we assume that we are the pinnacle, the culmination of a long line of primitive ancestors. But what if the truth is more humbling? What if we are merely the latest in a long line of civilizations, each climbing to the heavens, only to be brought low by forces far beyond their control, and perhaps even beyond their understanding? The pieces are scattered. Myths, ruins, alignments, anomalies. But when assembled, they begin to form a picture, not of a single lost civilization, but of many, each erased in the blink of an eye, each leaving behind just enough to haunt the edges of our memory. As the evidence accumulates, so too does the unease. It no longer seems like a matter of speculation, but one of timing. If these cataclysms occur with a regular behavior 11, 500 to 12, 0 years, then we are not simply approaching another shift. We are in its shadow. The last reset occurred at the end of the Ice Age, roughly 11,600 years ago. That figure appears again and again in geology, in mythology, in architecture, as if time itself is pointing to something inevitable. And in our modern world, filled with distractions, we are perhaps the least prepared of all civilizations that came before. We have built our society on fragile systems, electrical grids, communication networks, satellites, and data centers, all vulnerable to even modest cosmic disturbances. A single solar flare could plunge us into darkness, not just literally, but figuratively. Without power, our history vanishes. Without satellites, our systems collapse. Without communication, panic takes root. In ancient times, people looked up at the night sky and saw gods. Today, we look down at screens and see ourselves. We are disconnected from the earth, from the sky, from the rhythm of the universe. And so, when the signs appear as they already are, we do not recognize them. Consider the magnetic field. It is weakening rapidly. The poles are moving. The South Atlantic anomaly grows year by year, a region where Earth's protective shield is especially thin. Satellites fail more frequently in that region. Astronauts report strange flashes of light when passing through it. It is as if the planet is quietly preparing for a shift, one we are choosing to ignore. And yet, some are beginning to listen. Independent researchers, geologists, solar physicists, even whistleblowers from within military and scientific institutions are starting to sound the alarm, not of apocalypse, but of cycle, of a natural process long misunderstood, now returning like clockwork. The message is not fear, it is awareness. We have time, not much perhaps, but enough. Enough to prepare, to preserve, to remember. The ancients did what they could with what they had. They carved into stone, knowing it would outlast fire and flood. They aligned their temples to the stars, hoping one day someone would look up and understand. They passed their stories down, generation after generation, hoping the message would endure. Now it is our turn. If this cycle is real, if destruction does come, not by war or famine, but by sky and sea, then our task is not just to survive, but to carry the flame forward, to keep the knowledge alive, to warn those who come after, just as those who came before tried to warn us. We live at the edge of a great turning, and perhaps the greatest question is not what will happen, but who we will become when it does. There is a quiet kind of power in remembering, not just individual memories, but those passed down across ages, the memories encoded in myth, stone, and ritual. These are not simply remnants of primitive minds. They are echoes of survival. Every culture that endured a great upheaval tried, in some way, to speak to the future, to us. Their monuments and stories whisper from the past, though the language has changed. The key is learning to listen, to see with more than just modern eyes. Consider the star Sirius. It appears across ancient traditions with uncanny significance. The Dogon people of Mali described it as part of a binary system long before modern telescopes confirmed its invisible companion, Sirius B. The ancient Egyptians linked Sirius to the goddess Isis and the flooding of the Nile. Its heliacal rising marked the beginning of their calendar, a moment they associated not just with agriculture, but rebirth, as though the stars' return brought something greater than water, a celestial sign, a pulse from the heavens. How did they know? How could distant, pre-technological societies identify such precise astronomical truths? The mainstream answer is observation over long periods. But such exact knowledge of orbits, of cycles, of complex cosmic systems appears suddenly in the archaeological record. No slow evolution of understanding, just immediate awareness. It suggests a handoff, not a discovery, but a remembrance. Someone, somewhere, passed the torch. This becomes even more curious when you consider ancient calendars. Many of them were far more accurate than they should have been for their time. The Mayans calculated the solar year with stunning precision. The Sumerians used a sexagesimal system, and their numerical models contain data about celestial bodies only recently verified. The ancient Vedic texts describe the length of the yuga cycles in such vast numbers that they echo the timescales of astrophysics. Even our oldest religious stories are saturated with numbers that seem astronomical in nature. 40 days and 40 nights, 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, 12 tribes, 12 disciples, 12 constellations. These are not arbitrary. They are mnemonic devices, possibly references to cosmic truths obscured by time. So why embed this kind of information in religion, myth, and art? Perhaps because those were the vessels that could survive the longest. Not libraries or servers, but stories and temples. Carvings that could withstand the elements. Oral traditions repeated so often, they became part of the cultural soul. Maybe the ancients knew that even if language changed, even if names and faces were forgotten, the rhythm would remain. There are stone circles in Britain, in Africa, in Turkey, that predate writing, but align perfectly with the solstices and equinoxes. The builders tracked the sun, the moon, the stars. Some sites even mark the 26 zero-year precession cycle. These were not accidents. These were memories in motion. But with each cycle, something is lost. Civilizations rise, reach heights of knowledge and complexity, and then fall. Not always to conquest or corruption, but to something larger, a force they cannot control, a solar event, a magnetic shift, a tilt of the axis, a great wave. And what remains afterward is scattered, fragments, misunderstood by the next society to find them. We have inherited these fragments, and now, at the edge of another potential turning, we must choose how to use them, not just to predict what may come, but to preserve what we are. Modern science is a powerful tool, but it is not infallible. It evolves through correction, through the discovery that what we once believed was incomplete or even wrong. At one time, we thought Earth was the center of the universe, that atoms were indivisible, that nothing could travel faster than light. Each breakthrough came not from certainty, but from curiosity, from listening to what didn't fit. The theory of the 12 zero-year cataclysm cycle exists in that space. the edge between known and unknown. It has yet to be embraced by the mainstream, and yet it gathers evidence steadily. Independent researchers, historians, geologists, and astronomers are connecting dots that traditional models often overlook. Ice core samples, paleomagnetic data, sunspot cycles, fossil records. When layered together, they begin to tell a story too large and too precise to ignore. And at the heart of that story lies the sun, the great provider of light and life, and perhaps, at times, the harbinger of destruction. Most people think of the sun as stable, steady, predictable, but it is anything but. It pulses, it breathes, it stores energy, and releases it in sudden violent storms, solar flares, coronal mass ejections, geomagnetic disturbances. All are now tracked daily by satellite. But what if there's more? A deeper pulse, a cycle not yet fully understood. Some scientists propose that every 12 years or so, the sun releases a massive burst of energy, a micronova. Not enough to destroy the star, but more than enough to impact the solar system. This event could send high-energy particles hurtling toward Earth, vaporizing water, sparking fires, altering climates, and ultimately resetting civilization. It might also destabilize Earth's crust, causing earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. The scars of such events may be all around us. Blackened layers of soil known as burn horizons, glassy particles fused by extreme heat, and magnetic anomalies frozen into ancient rock. Many of these clues correspond to the end of the Younger Dryas, and some even older. It is as if the planet carries memory not in myth, but in matter. The timing is what makes this all so pressing. We are near the 12-year mark since the last cataclysm. Our magnetic field is weakening. Solar activity is rising. Anomalies in space such as interstellar objects and shifts in cosmic radiation are increasing. It may be coincidence, or it may be convergence. But even now, we continue to build higher, faster, more connected. Satellites circle overhead. Data pulses through invisible networks. Machines listen, learn, and anticipate. It is a miracle of engineering, and yet it is all so fragile. A single shock to the system, and much of it could vanish. History, memory, identity, all stored in circuits that depend on stability. Which is why now, more than ever, we must look backward to those who came before, to the ones who survived and tried to speak to us across the chasm of time. They built in stone, they carved in symbols, they preserved with myth. They knew the cycle would return, and they hoped someone would remember. Now we stand at that crossroads. The choice is not whether the cycle will come, but how we will face it. With fear or with preparation, with arrogance or with humility, with silence or with remembrance. Throughout human history, knowledge has ebbed and flowed like a tide, rising in golden ages, only to be swallowed by darkness. Libraries burned, cities lost beneath jungle and sea, languages forgotten. It is as if humanity must continually remember itself, only to forget once more. but each cycle leaves behind faint impressions, echoes that linger in architecture, in symbols, in stone. The very design of sacred spaces across the ancient world seems to suggest a connection, not just to spirit or deity, but to the cosmos itself. From Angkor Wat to Chichen Itza, from Stonehenge to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the structures do not merely reach for the heavens. They speak to them. They align with solstices and equinoxes, with star paths and eclipses. They map the heavens as if to track something beyond simple seasons, something that returns after long absences. In South America, the ruins of Tiwanaku lie at an altitude where survival is difficult, and yet the architecture is precise. Stones weighing dozens of tons fit together without mortar. Carvings align with celestial markers, and beneath the surface lie chambers still unexplored. Locals speak of a time before time, of ancestors not born of this world. It is a familiar theme. Civilizations around the globe claim descent from sky gods, from star visitors, from those who came in the aftermath of fire and flood to rebuild what had been lost. What if these weren't just mythological flourishes, but memories of survivors from a previous high civilization, one destroyed in a planetary cataclysm? There are persistent rumors dismissed by academia, but never quite silenced, of advanced technologies hidden in ancient ruins, of anomalous artifacts out of place and time. Ancient batteries, globes that defy known physics, carvings resembling helicopters and spacecraft. Mainstream science chalks these up to misinterpretation, to coincidence. And yet the same shapes, the same themes, appear repeatedly in cultures that never met. And there is something else. The obsession with underground structures, caves, tunnels, labyrinths, myths of hidden cities beneath the earth, places of refuge during the Great Destruction. Derinkuyu in Turkey is one such example. A vast underground city carved from solid rock, able to house thousands, with ventilation systems and complex passageways. No one knows exactly who built it or why, but local legends speak of a time when the surface was no longer safe, and the only hope was below. Could it be that these were shelters, arks not made of wood, but of stone? If the Earth's surface was to be scoured by solar radiation, tsunamis, or a shifting crust, the safest place would indeed be underground. Some believe that beneath many of today's sacred sites lie deeper structures, chambers yet to be revealed, waiting for the right time. Even in our modern era, governments and elites construct deep underground bunkers as if anticipating a future they dare not speak aloud. This instinct to go below seems almost inherited. So we begin to see a pattern. Catastrophe comes. A few survive. They rebuild slowly, but not always from scratch. They bring fragments of memory, of the sky, of the earth, of the rhythms that shape them both, and they warn in stone, in myth, in silence. They warn that it will come again, and so it might. The warnings left by ancient hands are not always carved into mountains or hidden beneath stone. Sometimes they're etched in the living body of Earth itself. In ice cores from Greenland, we find thin layers of ash, markers of ancient volcanic eruptions. In ocean sediments, we find signatures of temperature swings, so sudden they baffle climatologists. In tree rings, we see years of chaos, of failed growth, seasons turned upside down. Even in the soil beneath our feet, strange patterns emerge. Layers of charred carbon known as black mats found across North America and parts of Europe. Dated to roughly 12,800 years ago, this corresponds with what scientists call the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, the idea that a comet or fragment struck Earth, triggering mass extinctions and a plunge into a mini ice age. Though still debated, the theory fits too neatly with the cycle to be ignored. But it's not just physical evidence, it's psychological. Deep within the collective human psyche, there is a shadow, a fear of global flood, of fire from the sky, of an end that arrives not through war or famine, but from the cosmos itself. Carl Jung wrote of the collective unconscious, a shared well of memory and symbol. Could our myths of destruction be more than stories? Could they be the cry of something deep within us? A memory not entirely lost? There are subtle ways the Earth seems to speak to us. The Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic pulsar, has begun to behave unusually. Long stable at 7.83 Hz, in recent years it has spiked at unpredictable intervals. Some say this reflects solar activity. Others believe it reflects something more mysterious, perhaps even a response to human consciousness itself. And then there's the magnetosphere, that invisible shield that protects us from solar radiation. It is weakening, thinning, warping. The north and south magnetic poles are moving faster than ever before, and some scientists warn that a full reversal may be imminent. This has happened before in Earth's history, and during those periods, the planet was more exposed to cosmic rays, radiation, and possibly the triggering of volcanic and seismic activity. We live in a moment of technological marvels, but also great fragility. Our systems depend on stability, on climate, on power grids, on data. And yet, the very forces that sustained us for centuries now show signs of stress, of change. And still, the world spins on, the stars circle above, and most remain unaware of what may be unfolding. But those who built before us, who carved calendars into stone and watched the heavens, they knew they could not stop the cycle, but they could prepare. They could remember. They could pass on the knowledge in forms that would survive even when words did not. Now, perhaps, it falls to us to be the ones who listen, who look deeper, who prepare not just for ourselves, but for those yet to come, for the day the sky grows bright and the world begins again. When the cycle completes, when the sky turns strange and the ground groans beneath our feet, the moment of transition may arrive so quickly that there is no time left to wonder, no time to verify, to calculate, to argue. At that point, it won't matter what we believed. The Earth will simply do what it has always done: reset. The atmosphere might grow thick with dust, or radiant with solar fire. Waters might rise with sudden fury, and all the lights that once burned so brightly across our cities could vanish into silence. It is not fear that should drive us, but understanding. For this knowledge is not meant to paralyze, but to awaken, to connect us not only to those who may come after, but to those who came before. It is a bridge across time, across extinction, across the veil that separates memory from myth. One of the most striking aspects of this possible reset cycle is the synchronicity of ancient timekeeping systems. The Sumerian king list speaks of reigns that lasted for tens of thousands of years, impossibly long by modern standards, yet always ending in a great flood. The Mayan calendar traces time in Baktuns, cycles of 394 years, within even larger cycles that stretch across millennia. The Egyptian dynastic model begins after a mysterious period of rule by divine beings, as if to say, something extraordinary came first, and then it all began again. This pattern of divine rule, sudden destruction and rebirth appears again and again. It is as if history resets itself with a kind of ritual rhythm, and each new cycle begins with the belief that it is the first, that nothing came before. But things did come before. Evidence is slowly rising from the ice, from the ocean floor, from beneath dense jungle canopies, structures that predate written history, cities that appear in ancient maps but are dismissed as fantasy, such as those shown on the Piri Reis map, which depicts parts of Antarctica long before they were supposedly discovered. Could such maps be copies of copies of something once widely known? And what of the ancient texts that survived? The Book of Enoch speaks of watchers, of knowledge given and then buried. The Zohar, part of the Jewish Kabbalistic tradition, speaks of cycles and cosmic judgments. The Hindu Mahabharata tells of weapons so powerful they could melt stone, darken the sky, and bring entire cities to ash. These descriptions echo not only cataclysm, but technology, something ancient, lost, and misunderstood by those who followed. We are not alone in our time. The past leans toward us with whispers and symbols. It beckons us to pay attention, not to worship, not to fear, but to remember, to see the spiral, to trace the turning. And now, in the age of satellites and data, we have begun to measure the very things they watched. Solar cycles, Earth's magnetic heartbeat, the path of the stars over thousands of years. Our instruments have grown more precise, but our awareness has not. We monitor the sun, but do not honor it. We measure the stars, but no longer read their stories. We move faster, but think less. The ancients may have lacked our machines, but perhaps they had something else. Stillness, patience, connection. They watched long enough to recognize the sky's deep rhythm. And when disaster came, some were ready. Not all survived, but some did. And they left us maps, not of roads, but of time. Imagine the moment just before the shift. A quiet morning like any other. The sky the same, the ground steady. Then a shimmer. A strange light from the sun. A pulse. Not one visible to the eye, but something deeper. Sensed. Felt. The air changes. Birds fall silent. Animals grow restless. Technology flickers. And then the world begins to crack. It may not start with fire or water. It may begin with something silent and invisible, a wave of energy, an electromagnetic pulse, a distortion in the magnetosphere. Satellites go dark. Communication dies. Planes fall from the sky. Electrical grids fail. And suddenly, our modern civilization, so vast, so interconnected, feels smaller than we ever imagined. Powerless. Fragile. In ancient times, such an event would have been framed in spiritual terms. The wrath of the gods. The end of the age. Today, we may call it a coronal mass ejection, a pole reversal, or crustal displacement. But the result is the same. What we built is swept away. And so, the survivors would begin again, with stories, with fire, with memory half lost. They would rebuild not knowing how much had come before. They would eventually look up at the stars and wonder, as we once did. This cycle is not new. The Earth has done this before. It will likely do it again. And the only real question is whether, this time, we are ready to become part of the memory, or part of the message. All over the world, there are those who prepare quietly, not just with supplies, but with awareness, with reverence for ancient wisdom, with plans to preserve knowledge and not just data, but truth. Not just instructions, but understanding. Because what good is saving the internet if no one remembers how to build a generator? What good is preserving books if no one can read the language? The ancients knew this. That's why they carved into stone, why they used universal symbols, why they aligned their temples to the stars. They were sending signals forward, hoping someone would see, not with eyes, but with the mind. And perhaps that's the lesson, that true survival is not just about bunkers or tools, but about continuity, about becoming a thread in the fabric of time, stretching across resets, keeping the human story intact. Because maybe the purpose of understanding the Cataclysm cycle is not to escape it, but to grow through it, to become stewards of knowledge, keepers of memory, carriers of the flame. The cycle may bring darkness, but we can choose to bring the light. There's something humbling about realizing that everything we know could vanish, that the skyscrapers and satellites, the networks and noise, the lights of entire cities seen from space, could all be gone in an instant, not through war, not through human action, but through the quiet rhythm of nature, of time, of a cycle older than memory. And yet, this realization need not bring fear. In fact, it might bring clarity. We spend so much of our lives building outward, expanding, consuming, connecting across vast distances with invisible signals. But what if the next step is to turn inward, to reconnect with the deep intelligence of the earth and of ourselves, to look not only forward but backward, not to dwell in the past, but to understand its patterns, its voice. Because the cycle may not be a punishment, it may be a cleansing, not an end, but a turning, a chance for renewal, for rebirth. Ancient civilizations likely understood this. Their myths were not simply tales of terror, but of transformation. After the Great Flood, life returns. After the fire, green shoots rise. After the darkness, the light comes back. In Hindu cosmology, after the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, comes Satya Yuga, the age of truth. In Norse myth, after Ragnarok, a new world emerges, fresh and fertile. Even the Aztecs believed in cycles of suns, each destroyed and each reborn. It is not just destruction they speak of, but what comes after. Perhaps the ancients weren't just telling us how it ends, but how it begins again. This is why preserving knowledge matters. Not just information, but wisdom. The kind of wisdom that teaches how to live with the earth, not just on it. How to read the sky, how to find water, how to grow food without machines. These skills, once considered basic, are now almost forgotten. And yet, they are the seeds of survival. In the absence of power grids and internet signals, the one who can listen to the wind, who can read the ground, becomes the teacher. This is also why myth and story are so powerful. They carry truths that facts alone cannot. They slip through time in forms that speak to the heart as well as the mind. A child may not understand magnetic field reversals, but they understand a story about a hero who survives the flood. And when the time comes, that story might be enough to guide them. Some believe that the earth itself is conscious, not in the way a human is, but in a vast systemic sense. That the planet knows when it must renew itself. That these cycles are part of its own breath, exhaling and inhaling civilizations as part of a greater rhythm. And if that's true, then we are not separate from it. We are part of the breath, part of the rhythm. The purpose, then, is not to fight the cycle, but to harmonize with it, to be among those who see the signs, who listen to the stillness before the shift, who understand that survival is not just physical, but cultural, spiritual, generational. The ancients may have known the dates. We may know the data. But only together, past and present, can we shape a future that remembers. The notion of recurrence, of cosmic loops and planetary resets, has haunted philosophers and mystics as much as scientists. Nietzsche called it the eternal return. The idea that all things recur over and over, infinitely. The Stoics believed in great conflagrations that end the world periodically, only to begin again. In Buddhism, the universe is born, evolves, collapses, and is born again in an endless wheel. These are not just metaphysical ideas. They echo something we now observe in the cosmos itself. Stars are born from clouds of dust, live brilliant lives, then explode and return their elements to space to form new stars. Galaxies collide and reform. Planets form from the remnants of older worlds. Even black holes, the devourers of light, may give rise to new realities. The universe moves in cycles. Why would Earth be any different? Our planet has already shown us this truth. Mass extinctions followed by explosions of new life. Ice ages followed by warming periods. Epochs defined not by slow change, but by sudden, decisive shifts. And each time life finds a way forward, changed, but still alive. In the wake of catastrophe, something new always emerges. Perhaps we should not dread the next great shift, but prepare for what comes after. Not merely to survive, but to be stewards of a new world, carriers of the best parts of what we were, so we might become something more. This is the deeper purpose of remembering the cycle, not just to understand history, but to shape destiny. If we know that collapse is possible, perhaps inevitable then, we have a responsibility. Not just to warn, but to act. Not just to grieve, but to build. In small ways we can begin now. Plant seeds that grow without the need for modern irrigation. Build libraries that do not depend on electricity. Learn the night sky not from an app, but with the naked eye. Teach stories that carry meaning across generations. Remember that wisdom is not obsolete. It is the foundation upon which every future will depend. And while much of the world may dismiss these ideas, or laugh at the notion of ancient cycles and forgotten resets, there are always those few, those quiet ones, who listen, who feel the stirring deep in the bones of the earth, who sense the rhythm beneath the noise, who prepare not with fear, but with reverence. These are the new builders, the ones who will watch the sky not for fear, but for signs, who will read the old stones and understand their language, who will kneel beside the fires of the next age and tell the stories that kept them alive. And somewhere, perhaps, those who came before will be watching, not with eyes, but with silence, with the calm presence of those who know the cycle has turned once again. In the shadow of our modern world, beneath the hum of machines and the glow of artificial light, there still exists something older, quieter, enduring. It lives in the stone circles no one understands, in the deep caves that echo with forgotten chants, in the ruins covered by jungle and ice. These remnants are not merely old. They are survivors. They endured the last turning, and now they watch this one approach. And in that quiet, something strange happens. A kind of remembering, not just with the mind, but with the soul. It stirs when we look up at the stars and feel something vast staring back. It whispers when we stand in silence beneath ancient skies. It is the sense that this moment, this civilization, is not the first to stand here, that others stood before, looked up as we do, built, hoped, and dreamed, only to be scattered by time. But they did not vanish completely. They left markers, patterns. They understood that stone endures when memory fades, that myth endures when names are forgotten. And so they embedded what mattered into the structures and symbols that would outlive them. The spiral, the triangle, the serpent eating its tail. These are not merely decorations, they are code. The spiral for time, the triangle for harmony between earth, sky, and spirit. The serpent as the cycle its endless return, devouring and renewing. Modern science now begins to echo these same truths. Physicists speak of entropy and emergence, of systems that collapse, then reform. Chaos theory reveals patterns inside disorder. Climate scientists speak of tipping points, moments when systems change irreversibly, not gradually, but all at once. It's as if across every discipline we are rediscovering the ancient truth that nature moves not in straight lines, but in loops. And so we ask again, where are we now in the cycle? The magnetic field continues to decline. The poles continue their migration. Solar activity is erratic. Earth's rotation has shown minor but unexplained anomalies. Lightning storms are intensifying. Glaciers melt from beneath. Ocean currents shift, and the jet stream, that great atmospheric river, meanders with increasing unpredictability. All of this may seem disconnected, isolated events, but viewed through the lens of the cycle, they are not. They are symptoms, tremors before the quake. And like the civilizations before us, we are busy, distracted, building higher, while the ground beneath us begins to shift. Yet in the margins, something else is stirring. People are waking up, quietly, slowly. They are learning the old ways, studying the sky, building not just for profit, but for endurance, planting food that can grow in any climate, saving seeds, writing books by hand, teaching their children not just how to use technology, but how to live without it. They are not prophets or preachers. They are gardeners, stoneworkers, listeners. And in their stillness, they are preparing, not for the end, but for the beginning that follows. Because if the cycle is real, if the reset comes, the greatest gift we can leave is not a warning, but a path, a light in the dark, a story that survives the silence. Let us imagine for a moment what that reset might feel like. Not the apocalyptic spectacle of fiction, but something more subtle, more profound. The sky grows hazy, not from smoke, but from dust, ash, solar particles. The stars grow faint. Technology begins to fail, first gradually, then all at once. Communications drop. Power grids become unreliable. Panic spreads in places that once felt untouchable. But not everywhere. Some places are quiet. Remote villages, mountain shelters, underground sanctuaries. There, fire still burns. Food is still grown by hand. People still speak stories by memory. In these places, the reset is felt, yes, but it is not feared. Because they remember, perhaps not the science, but the rhythm, the pulse. They've been waiting for this, not hoping for it, not dreading it, just listening. And when the world changes, they will not run. They will plant. They will sing. They will begin. This is the power of knowing. The ancients knew they couldn't stop the cycle, but they could shape what comes after. They could preserve the essential. Not every technology, not every structure, but the seed of civilization itself, the story, the rhythm, the reason. If we are wise, we will do the same. Store knowledge in simple, durable forms. Carve it into stone if we must. Teach the young how to live without machines. Embed wisdom into rituals, into songs, into stories that will be told even when paper is gone and power is lost. Because stories are the oldest technology, the original memory drive. They carry more than facts. They carry meaning. And it is meaning that survives. Perhaps that is why ancient myths feel so familiar, as if we've heard them before. Perhaps we have, in another life, another world, another cycle. So now, we return to the question, are we next in line? The signs suggest that we are, but that is not a curse. It is a calling to become the bridge between worlds, to carry what is worth saving, to plant what will feed the future, to sing what will soothe the survivors, to write what the next age must remember. This is not the end of the story. It never was. It is only the moment. between breaths. As we pass deeper into this unfolding moment of quiet uncertainty, we begin to sense that the Earth herself is not simply a backdrop to human activity, but an actor in the drama. She moves, shifts, and breathes, and sometimes she turns the page. This turning may not be violent in appearance at first. It may be gradual, unseen, unspoken, until, quite suddenly, the world we knew has changed. What we call civilization is a thin surface, a delicate crust atop an ancient and powerful core. Cities are recent, languages newer still. The age of data, satellites, and networks is a mere blink in the planetary timeline. And yet, we believe it permanent, immutable. But the deeper rhythms remind us, permanence does not exist in nature, only pattern. And the pattern shows us something profound, a memory embedded in ice, rock, and myth, that around every 12 years, something resets. It may begin with magnetism, or with a burst from the sun, or with something even larger, the galactic tides that pull at the edges of our solar system as it dances through the Milky Way. Perhaps this cosmic tide stirs the sun, and the sun in turn stirs the earth. When you step back far enough, you begin to see it, not just in geology, but in the rise and fall of human cultures. Civilizations that emerged with strange advanced knowledge only to disappear, not slowly, but with sudden finality, as if the earth flipped a switch. We often think of history as a line, but the line loops. The same stories return, with new faces, new languages, but the same bones. Floods, fire, sky gods, rebirth, the knowledge buried, the monuments left behind, the warnings misunderstood. And now, we may be near that turning again. Our oceans are warmer, our poles are unstable, our magnetic shield is thinning, solar patterns are becoming erratic, the sky shows signs and the ground responds. Earthquakes strike in unexpected places. Volcanoes begin to stir, and while science works tirelessly to explain each event, few ask if these scattered moments are part of a greater rhythm. We don't need fear. We need listening. We need stillness. We need to see with ancient eyes. Because perhaps we are not meant to stop the cycle. Perhaps we are only meant to survive it wisely, to carry forward that which truly matters. What is it that truly matters? Not the towers we build, not the speed of our machines, but the values, the stories, the understanding that makes us human, compassion, memory, the quiet strength to rebuild, the wisdom to learn from what came before. All across the world, people are beginning to wake to this. Artists, farmers, healers, thinkers. They are preparing not in panic, but in patience. Quietly, they are weaving the seeds of tomorrow into the soil of today. And if we are to join them, we must begin by letting go of the illusion that history is fixed, that the present is permanent. We must look to the sky not for distraction, but for guidance. We must read the ground not for resources, but for rhythm. Because the signs are not hidden, they are everywhere, waiting only for those with eyes to see. In the great silence between cycles, there is a kind of sacred breath, a stillness before the next sound. a darkness before the next dawn. And perhaps we are in that silence now, the final breath before the turning. This moment is not about endings, it is about inheritance. What will we leave behind? And what will those who come after remember of us? If we were to vanish tomorrow, what would remain? Our data? Our monuments? Our machines? Or something less tangible and more enduring? The ancient ones knew they could not preserve everything. They chose wisely. What they left behind was symbolic, sacred geometry, alignments with the stars, myths rich with layered meaning. Why? Because they understood that time would change the language, the tools, the landscapes, but not the sky, not the cycle. And so they gave us maps made of metaphor, calendars carved in stone, tales of great floods, of fallen stars, of fire that comes without warning. These were not just memories. They were instructions, encoded into culture, passed down as legend. And now, as the cycle whispers again, we find ourselves standing before the same decision. What do we preserve? What do we teach? What do we bury in hope that it will rise again? Maybe we write it in stories. Maybe we teach it in silence. Maybe we build places of remembering, not temples, not towers, but circles, hearths, gardens, places where truth can survive the storm. And if we must pass through the fire again, let us carry the water. If we must lose the light, let us keep the spark. Because those who come after may not know our names, but they will walk our ruins. They will touch the stones. They will ask as we have asked, who were they? And maybe, just maybe, they'll find more than ash. They'll find meaning. They'll find memory. They'll find the message. Not in data, but in rhythm. Not in glass, but in granite. Not in power, but in presence. The presence of a people who saw the cycle coming and chose to remember. To not build only for themselves, but for the ones who would come long after. This is the quiet work of those who understand, not to escape the turning of the wheel, but to ride it wisely, to be still in the storm, to be the voice in the silence, to be the echo that endures. Somewhere in the quiet places of the world, far from the noise of cities and the flicker of screens, the earth still speaks in her original tongue. The wind carries stories over ancient stones. The rivers remember paths carved by floods long forgotten. The stars continue their eternal dance overhead, just as they did when the first human looked up and wondered. And in these quiet places, the cycle is not a theory. It is a feeling, a rhythm, a knowing. You can feel it in your bones if you're still long enough. It is in this stillness that the deepest truths reveal themselves, not through charts or equations, but through resonance, the kind that doesn't need to be explained, only remembered. And that memory is buried in us all. We carry fragments of the old stories, even if we don't realize it. It's why we're drawn to firelight, why ruins speak louder than new buildings, why the stars still stir something sacred in us. These are not random instincts. They are echoes, because we have been here before, in other lives, in other forms, in other turns of the cycle. We've walked through ash. We've rebuilt from dust. We've stared into skies that burned with light too bright to name. And always, always, someone survived. Not because they had the most power, but because they remembered the most truth. So, what is that truth? It is not complicated. It does not need to be written in scientific journals or encoded into quantum servers. It can be carved into stone with a chisel, whispered in song, etched into symbols passed from hand to hand. It can survive. Because truth is not fragile. Only our systems are. The real question isn't how to stop the cycle. It's how to live through it with grace. How to carry forward what truly matters when the rest falls away. If the lights go out, will we remember how to sing? If the machines stop humming, will we know how to plant? If the sky grows quiet, will we still know how to listen? Because when the cycle turns sand, it will. What remains is not the echo of our wealth, or our machines, or our ambition. What remains is character. The choices we made, the stories we told, the wisdom we carried across the fire. This is our task. Not to escape history, but to join it. Not to outrun the storm, but to become the calm within it. Not to fear the darkness, but to prepare the next light. And to ensure that, next time, those who wake beneath new skies will not have to begin again from nothing, but from something quietly sacred, something left behind by those who remembered. Let us now imagine a far future. Long after the reset has passed, the earth is once again quiet, green, breathing. The cities are gone, their outlines traced by moss and roots. The oceans have carved new coasts. The sky has changed, new constellations slowly emerging as the heavens continue their ancient drift. And somewhere in that future, a child stands before a stone. Perhaps it is the base of a monument, a shard of something once towering. Perhaps it bears markings, a symbol, a pattern, something simple but strange. And the child asks, "What is this?" And in that moment, everything we did to prepare, to preserve, will speak. The story will live again, maybe not exactly as we told it, maybe not in our language, but in essence, in rhythm, in meaning. The child will know that others came before, that we watched the skies, that we built not just for ourselves, but for them. And in that knowledge, a new age begins, not from ruin, but from remembering. Because in every turning of the cycle, there is this one moment where both past and future meet, where the hands that carve the stone touch the eyes that find it. And through that connection, time becomes something else, something soft, something sacred. This is what it means to endure, not to cling to what we built, but to plant what can grow. And now, in our own turning, we are the ones who must choose what to plant. We have the tools, the warnings, the signs, and the echoes of those who once stood where we now stand. Let us not waste what they left us. Let us not fear what comes. Let us become the quiet builders, the keepers of the seed, the ones who hold the light gently in the dark, so that one day, far from now, when the earth is new again, and the skies clear, and the rivers run their new courses, The children of that world will remember us not for our towers or machines, but for our wisdom. And for the story we chose to leave behind, time has never been a straight line. It bends, spirals, circles back upon itself in ways that challenge our understanding. What we call the past is not gone. It is woven into the present, and what we call the future is already reaching toward us through signs, through memory, through a rhythm that pulses just beneath our awareness. Every civilization has had its moment in the sun, and everyone has believed, in some form, that it would last forever. Rome thought it eternal. Babylon called itself the gate of the gods. Atlantis, as legend tells it, was so confident in its grandeur that it ignored the warnings until the waves rose to take it back. And yet, from each of these lost worlds, something endured. A story, a caution, a flicker of remembrance. We now live in an age more advanced than any before, or so we tell ourselves. Satellites orbit our skies. Algorithms shape our thoughts. Machines learn faster than we teach. And yet, beneath it all, there remains a soft vulnerability. Because if the sun releases just one powerful burst, if the magnetic field falters, if the crust shifts even slightly, our digital world could blink out, just like that, silent, forgotten. It's humbling, but it's also an invitation to ask not only how we survive the cycle, but how we respond to it. Will we resist it in fear, or will we align with it in wisdom? The ancients aligned. They watched the skies for omens. They marked the solstices and equinoxes with stone. They understood that to survive the earth's great breath, one must breathe with it, not against it. The temples of Egypt, the pyramids of Mesoamerica, the megaliths of Europe, these were not merely places of worship. They were instruments, tools for tuning the human soul to the larger rhythms of the cosmos. And in their silence, they continue to teach. We have the opportunity to build with the same intention, to shift our focus from conquest to continuity, from speed to stillness, to design lives that do not tremble at the thought of collapse, but stand ready to plant, to teach, to remember. There is something deeply human in this calling, a yearning to be part of something larger than a single life or a single age, to be a bridge, not just a consumer, to carry a flame that might one day light the fire in a world we will never see. Somewhere, someone is already doing this, perhaps in a small village, far from power lines, perhaps in a crowded city rooftop garden, perhaps in a quiet room filled with books. They are writing, planting, teaching their children how to listen to the sky. They are preparing not for an end, but for a turning. And so must we, not with panic, but with presence, with reverence for the mystery of it all. Because even if we cannot change the course of the cycle, we can choose how we walk within it. As the cycle tightens, as the signs gather, like clouds on the horizon, the most important work becomes the most invisible. It does not shout. It does not seek the spotlight. It moves quietly, like roots beneath the soil, preparing the ground for what is to come. This is the work of the keepers, the ones who hold the stories, who safeguard the seeds, who understand that the world we build today becomes the inheritance of tomorrow's survivors. The keepers do not wait for permission. They do not ask whether the world is ready. They begin with small, deliberate acts, archiving old knowledge, learning ancient skills, preserving seeds that might feed a future, building structures meant to last not for beauty, but for meaning. This is the ark building of our time, not in wood, but in memory, not to escape the flood, but to endure what follows. And it isn't only about survival in the physical sense. It is about the survival of soul, of culture, of the wisdom that took countless generations to earn. Because without it, we start over, not as a new world, but as a repeating world. To stop repeating, we must remember, not the facts and figures, but the lessons, the deeper truths that myth encodes, that time preserves only when carried by living beings. Truths like balance, humility, the sacredness of life, the gift of fire, the need for song. These are the things that build civilizations that last beyond cataclysm. Not walls, not weapons, but wisdom, shared from elder to youth, across seasons and storms, and passed along not because it's profitable, but because it's right. You might wonder, what can one person do? The answer is always the same. Everything. One seed becomes a tree. One story becomes a lineage. One home becomes a village. One circle of light in the darkness becomes the sunrise of the next age. This is not a fantasy. It is how the world has always begun again. And perhaps it is beginning now. Not loudly, not all at once, but in quiet rooms, in hands that build, in hearts that remember, in minds willing to see the stars not just as distant fires, but as ancient companions, marking the rhythm of the cycle and the return of the light. There's a moment, just before dawn, when the world holds its breath. The sky is dark, but no longer black. A quiet anticipation hums in the stillness, and for a brief heartbeat, all things are poised between what was and what will be. This moment exists not just in the day, but in the great rhythms of Earth itself. It is the threshold between cycles, and we may be standing in it now. Across the globe, changes once considered impossible are unfolding. Glaciers that stood for tens of thousands of years are vanishing. Oceans, long held at bay, creep inward. Lightning storms flash in patterns no one expected. The jet stream wavers, winds shift. Forests die and regrow in strange places. Volcanoes, long silent, emit quiet tremors, and beneath the surface, deep currents of magnetism churn with growing intensity. Our ancestors would not have been surprised. They watched the skies for signs like these, not with radar or satellite, but with eyes honed by generations of listening. They felt the tremble of the earth under their bare feet. They heard the shift in bird calls, in wind patterns, in the tone of flowing water. These were not superstitions, they were observations. A language of nature that modern minds have mostly forgotten. Yet it's still there, waiting. There are people today, far from the cities, who still speak it, who still live in rhythm with the land. And when asked, they do not laugh at the idea of the cycle. They nod. They remember. They may not use scientific terms, but their stories describe the same thing. A time of turning, a great cleansing, a rebirth. And what's most striking is that their stories are not filled with panic. They are solemn, grounded, almost gentle, because they do not see the reset as punishment. They see it as part of life's long breath. Destruction is never the end. It is only preparation for growth. This is a lesson we need now more than ever, because it allows us to shift from fear to intention. Instead of running from the cycle, we walk with it. Instead of hoarding, we plant. Instead of denying, we observe. Instead of despairing, we prepare. And in doing so, we become part of the sacred rhythm that has always shaped this world. We are not above it. We are within it. Each of us becomes a note in the song of the turning, a voice that helps carry the memory of the old into the soil of the new. Even the smallest action echoes. A single candle, passed hand to hand, can light the path through an entire age of darkness. Picture a world rebuilt after the storm, not in the image of the old world, but in harmony with the truths that the storm revealed. The people of this new time do not begin with skyscrapers or machines. They begin with gardens, with fire circles, with stories told beneath open skies. They remember the silence that came when the old systems fell, and they vow not to build blindly again. These people do not fear the sky. They revere it. They watch it. They remember the ancient rhythms written in the stars. Their calendars are not digital. They are lunar, solar, stellar. They track the seasons not with devices, but with the land itself. And within these communities, there are stories, not of loss, but of survival, of a time when the world changed and some remembered. They speak of the cycle, of the old world that came before, of the signs, of the silence, and of those who prepared, not just for themselves, but for the future. In this way, the thread continues, unbroken, because somewhere, someone planted the seed, and that seed was not a structure or a server or a database. It was a story, a way of seeing the world, a remembering. This is the legacy we can choose. Even now, with the world still humming, with the city still lit, we can begin. We can turn our attention not to stopping the inevitable, but to honoring it. We can begin to live as if the cycle were real, as if the signs matter, as if the future is listening, because it is. And it listens not to our words, but to our actions, to the choices we make, to the way we live in harmony out of sync with the earth's deeper rhythms. This doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, to live each day with awareness, to look at the sky with reverence, to plant even when the harvest is uncertain, to speak truth even when the world prefers silence, and to leave behind not a monument, but a message, one that says, we were here, we saw, we remembered. We lived in rhythm with the turning, and in doing so, we helped carry the song forward, so that one day, when the cycle turns again, someone else will hear it, and begin, not from silence, but from song. What does it truly mean to prepare for a global reset? Not as a survivalist bracing for the end, but as a keeper of continuity, aware of the turning, but not afraid of it. It means shifting how we think about time. It means seeing beyond the brief flicker of a single life and remembering that we are part of something older and longer, something measured not in years, but in epochs. The tree that drops its leaves in autumn does not mourn the coming winter. It knows, it remembers, that spring follows. So too must we hold that trust. And so, we begin to live with the long view. We write not only for readers now, but for voices we may never hear. We build not for profit, but for permanence. We teach not only facts, but values, the kind that root deep enough to survive the storm. We begin to ask ourselves different questions. Not, how do I survive? But, what will I leave behind? Not, what do I own? But, what do I carry? Because this moment, this fragile, trembling no was the hinge of the cycle. We can feel it in the air, in the headlines, in the restlessness of modern life. We know that change is coming. But the question is not if, it is how we respond. Some will cling to the old ways, to endless consumption, to illusions of control. But others, quietly, patiently, will become something else. Stewards, witnesses, seed bearers. And among these people, there will be those who understand that true resilience is not built with steel and concrete, but with understanding, with community, with a kind of rootedness that goes deeper than any foundation. It is not glamorous, it is not loud, but it is powerful. It is the power of knowing the winds will rise and planting anyway, of knowing the sky may darken and still lighting the lamp, of watching the sea draw back and still teaching the child how to swim. This is not foolish hope. It is ancestral memory, because the cycle has turned before, and always someone carried the fire. Now it is our turn to listen, to learn, to live as if we are already part of what comes next. Because in truth, we are. Imagine a great book, not of paper and ink, but of stone and sky and silence. A book that contains the true history of Earth, not the filtered record of kings and empires, but the raw memory of floods, fires, stars, and storms. This book has no beginning and no end. It cannot be erased or rewritten. It speaks in seasons, in magnetism, in the slow, slow drift of continents. And in this book, every 12 years, a page turns. We are on such a page now. And unlike the books we know, this one does not wait for our permission. It turns when it must. But what is written on the next page, that part, is not fixed. That is where we come in. That is where choice still lives. Because no cycle, no storm, no reset can erase a story well told. No flood can drown a truth that lives in song, in memory, in the hands and hearts of people who choose to carry it. So we must become tellers, not just of warnings, but of wisdom, not just of what might be lost, but of what might yet be found, because this is not only the end of a cycle, it is the beginning of a new one. The soil of collapse is also the soil of creation, and the story that begins here now, with us, may be the most important story yet. It will not be written in textbooks. It will not be broadcast from towers. It will be passed hand to hand, heart to heart, like a quiet fire glowing in the dark. The fire that says, we remembered. We did not run from the rhythm. We walked with it. We learned. We planted. We prepared. And because we did, something survived. A truth, a light, a lineage of knowing. And in some far future, long after the cycle has turned, that light may become a sun again, rising over a new world, one that remembers the old, not with grief, but with gratitude, because someone, somewhere, long ago, chose to carry the flame. It's a strange thing to live at the edge of an age, to stand where the old begins to fray, and the new has not yet arrived. We are surrounded by signs, some subtle, some unmistakable, that something beneath the surface of reality is shifting. And though the world continues on in its daily rhythms, part of us feels it. The quiet unraveling, the moment before the fall of a leaf, the hush before the first drop of rain. This awareness does not live in headlines. It lives in intuition, in the way the wind changes direction without warning, in the way animals move, the way the light feels different at sunset. We might not be able to prove it with instruments, but somewhere deep inside, we know. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the ancients tried to pass on. Not just data, but the ability to feel the turning. Because what good is a prophecy if no one can hear it? What use is knowledge if it lives only in locked vaults, out of reach? The truths that endure are the ones carried in story, in practice, in song and ritual and shared silence. That's why so many of the old myths survived. Not because they were written down, but because they were lived. There's something profoundly human in this, in how we hold memory. We tuck it into language, into lullabies, into sacred dances and symbolic art, not always because we understand it, but because we sense it matters, because some part of us remembers. And perhaps this is what preparation truly means. Not building walls, not storing food in fear, but restoring connection to land, to sky, to each other. Because when the reset comes, and it will come, it will not ask for our money. It will not care for our status. It will strip us to what is essential. And what is essential is not what we own, but what we know. How to make fire, how to find water, how to sit in stillness without panic, how to speak to the earth like an old friend, not a resource. These are the real treasures, the true legacy, the skills and wisdom that no solar flare, no rising tide, no shaking ground can ever take from us. And if we begin now, quietly, patiently, to learn and to teach these things, then the cycle will not be a breaking. It will be a becoming. There is a kind of courage that does not shout, that does not march or battle or conquer. It is the courage of tending, of preserving, of remembering in the face of forgetting. This is the courage we need now, to look at a world built on distraction and say, no more. To choose slowness in a time of speed. To choose presence when all around us is noise. To choose meaning over momentum. Because even as the signs mount melting glaciers, solar pulses, magnetic shifts, we still have a choice. Not to stop the cycle, but to move through it with grace. Imagine what it might feel like to meet that moment, not in panic, but in purpose. To watch the storm rise and know that you are rooted, that you've planted the right seeds, that you've taught the songs, that you've looked into the eyes of the next generation and given them what matters most. Not fear, but faith. Not avoidance, but alignment. There will be others, of course, who mock this path, who say the cycle is myth, the stories are fantasy, the warnings are paranoia. Let them speak, let them laugh. But you will know, you will feel it in the bones of the earth, in the shifting of the stars. You will hear it in the silence between storms. And when the world begins to tremble, you will not run. You will listen. And you will remember, because you prepared not just your shelter, but your soul. You built your foundation, not in concrete, but in community. You guarded not your goods, but your goodness. And when the dust settles, when the fires die down, when the waters recede, you will rise, and you will carry forward the truth that was passed to you through story, through song, through soil. You will build not from ambition, but from love, not from fear, but from wisdom. And the world you create will not look like the one before. It will be quieter, more grounded, rooted in the lessons the cycle has always offered for those willing to learn. And somewhere, far beyond today, children will gather around a fire, and they will ask, how did it all begin again? And someone, maybe you, will smile and begin to tell the story. So many times in history, the flame has almost gone out. In the collapse of great empires, in the silencing of languages, in the fall of libraries and temples, the world has come close to forgetting. And yet, something always remained. A spark, a fragment, a whisper that refused to die. It is this whisper that moves through us now. We carry it, even if we don't realize it, in the questions we ask, in the stories that pull us, in the way we stare a little longer at the stars than we meant to. This is memory older than words, and it may be the most important part of who we are. Because when the ground shifts, when the sky darkens, when what we've built is tested by the rhythm of earth and time, it will be this inner knowing that guides us. And so, the task becomes simple, though not easy. To protect that knowing, to keep it alive in a world that moves too fast to remember. To become, in a sense, like the old ones. The ones who knew that knowledge is not something you store in machines, but in people, in practice, in story, in soil. The wise prepare quietly. They observe. They listen. They build without seeking credit. They pass knowledge forward not through grand declarations, but through shared meals, through planting hands, through quiet conversations under stars. They are the watchers, the rememberers, the ones who walk with the cycle, not against it. And in doing so, they shape what the next world will become. This is what it means to be alive now, to live at the hinge of the turning. It is no accident. You are here at this moment for a reason. Not to be afraid, but to be awake. Not to escape the cycle, but to embody its wisdom. To become part of the unbroken thread that stretches through time, carrying with it the song of the earth, the voice of the stars, the memory of all that came before. And when the winds rise, when the old world crumbles, you will know where to stand, not at the top of the tower, but at the root, where all new life begins. There's something deeply beautiful about endings that lead to beginnings, about a horizon that's both the close of day and the promise of dawn. The cycle, for all its danger, carries with it a strange kindness, an invitation to let go of what no longer serves, and to begin again simpler, wiser, more connected. Imagine, if you can, the moment just after the great silence, when the earth breathes once more, the sky clears, the water settles, and in that quiet, a new world begins to listen. What it hears first will shape everything. Will it hear confusion, fear, noise? Or will it hear a story? Will it hear voices that remember, hands that know what to plant, hearts that understand how to rebuild with care? That is up to us. Right now, in this window before the turning, we hold a gift the ancients would have longed for: foresight. We have the science to see the signs, the myths to remember the warnings, the wisdom to act with intention. We are not blind, but knowledge alone is not enough. It must be lived. It must be practiced. It must be made real in our choices, our communities, our daily rhythms. We do not need to convince the world. We only need to become the example. A small garden, thriving where there was once concrete. A child taught to watch the stars instead of a screen. A circle of friends who know how to cook without power, how to heal with plants, how to speak with honesty. These things are not old-fashioned. They are future-proof. They are the threads of continuity. And in a time when the world feels like it's unraveling, we become the weavers. Quietly, patiently, with steady hands, we mend the fabric of what will come next. The cycle will turn, of that we can be sure. But what is written into the soil of the new world? What seeds lie waiting to sprout in the aftermath? That is what we decide now. Not through noise, not through fear, but through intention, through presence, through a gentle, persistent remembering that we were here, that we listened, that we chose not only to survive, but to preserve the sacred and to carry it into the dawn. And so we come to the quiet edge of the story, not its end, but its resting place, a breath held between what has been and what might come. The final step in this long spiral through memory, myth, science, and silence. Here, the voices of the past fade gently, and the voices of the future begin to stir. There are no drums in this moment, no grand conclusions, just the gentle understanding that we are part of something far older than we know, and far more mysterious than we can measure. The 12 zero-year cycle does not ask for belief. It simply is, like the tides, like the seasons, like the breath of the earth itself. It turns whether we look or not, whether we prepare or not. And now, as the arc of this age begins its descent, we are offered a choice. Not to escape the turning, but to greet it with reverence, with clarity, with grace. We have wandered through ruins and risen cities, through ancient skies and buried legends, through magnetic fields and solar flares, myths and machines, floods and fire. And through it all, the same rhythm pulses beneath every detail: collapse and renewal, loss and remembrance, darkness and light. This is the nature of life on Earth. Not a straight line, but a heartbeat. And just as the heart must contract before it can expand, so too must we pass through endings to reach new beginnings. So now, what remains? A story, a thread, a light, not bright and blinding, but soft, like the glow of embers in the dark. This light is not ours to own, it is ours to carry and to pass on, because the future is watching us now, not through telescopes or satellites, but through time itself. It waits to see what we will leave behind, what we will encode not just into technology, but into meaning, into ritual, into the way we live our final moments. In this age, with awareness, with courage, with heart. Maybe that's the point. Not to stop the cycle, not even to explain it, but to live so well within it that when the next world wakes, it finds not just the ashes of what we lost, but the seeds of what we chose to preserve. So let the towers fall, if they must. Let the silence come, but let there be, in the ruins, a garden, a song, a child looking up at the stars and remembering that we once lived, not in fear of the turning, but in harmony with it. And in that remembering, we never truly ended. We became part of the rhythm. We became the voice inside the cycle, whispering softly into the dawn. Remember, the story is not finished. It never was. The cycle will turn again. And when it does, may there be those who remember, who carry the light, who plant the seeds, who whisper truth through silence and song. Not the end, only the breath before the beginning.